Hello, everyone, and welcome to this part of the Audrain Newport Concours Seminar Series. I'm Donald Osborne, CEO of Audrain, and I'm here in the Audrain Automobile Museum in Newport, Rhode Island. And I'm very, very, very happy to welcome our three guests for our program, Racetrack to the Opera, Marques that Did It All, coinciding with our exhibition by the same name, which is running here at the Audrain. And I'm joined today by Steve Babinski, one of the world's leading restorers of classic and sports cars in the world, based in New Jersey, a man whose work has been seen at leading concours d'elegance around the world, and the winner of many Best in Class and the Best of Show award at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance in California. And also, I might add, a keen collector himself who enjoys not only collecting cars, but driving cars, which to me is what it's all about. And thank you for joining us today, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. Very kind.
You're very welcome. And from Milan, Italy, we have Louis de Fabribeckers, who is the head of design for Touring Superleggera. And Louis is a young man of immense talent and great personality who has an impossible job to be the heir of one of the greatest design houses in history, Carrozzeria Touring, and to lead Touring Superleggera into a new age of coach building, which really makes me so incredibly happy as a big fan of design and particularly of coach built cars. I thought that in my lifetime, the era was gone. With modern production techniques, you could never build truly custom bespoke cars. And I'm really happy to see that Touring Superleggera has really led the way in reviving that concept. And with Louis and his designs that he's done on a wonderful number of bases on Bentleys, Alfa Romeo, Maserati, really some, even Mini, some really terrific cars with incredible designs and great spirit. And Louis and I also have met each other on many occasions in many countries. We first met in the offices of Touring Superleggera in Milano, where he did a presentation of the design for the Disco Volante Alfa Romeo based on the Alfa 8C Competizione. We then served as judges at the Concorso d'Eleganza di Kyoto in Japan, and then recently we're together in India. So it's great to have you here, Louis, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Donald, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, one of my favorite people on the planet, and I don't say that in a light way, Anne Brockington Lee of Reno, Nevada. Anne is one of the most enthusiastic, knowledgeable, and tasteful car collectors in the world. And she is the glorious mistress of an amazing collection of cars that spans from Ferrari race cars to Rolls Royces and Bentleys. I mean, the full gamut of from the racetrack to the opera. I mean, she could probably just do the entire exhibition herself in the Lee collection. And it's just such an honor to be with you today, Anne. And even though we can't be in the same place, I'm giving you a virtual hug because it's just wonderful to do that.
Thank you, Donald. It's great to be with you.
Well, as I was saying, since we can't be with you together in a live in-person seminar, which we had planned for this group in our 2020 Audrain Newport Concours and Motor Week, we've begun this series of virtual seminars. We had the first one 2 weeks ago called The Next Generation, in which I was the moderator for a group of young enthusiasts, 17-year-olds, 2 13-year-olds, and a 10-year-old, because I know that a lot of people who are involved with collector cars and cars in general are very concerned that young people, it is perceived that young people aren't interested in cars anymore. And what will happen to something that we all love, this hobby and business that we all love, after the present generation that forms the backbone of collectors are no longer on the scene. And this seminar proved, I hope, to everyone who viewed it and everyone who will view it on our YouTube channel, where it's now posted, that the love for cars is alive and well in very young people. And the 3 guests that I have here today, I'm sure their love of cars started very young, and that spirit continues today. After this presentation, our next presentation in the series will be a very exciting one, which is about bringing characters to life and as cars, with Jay Ward, the creative director for the Pixar franchise of Cars movies. He'll be joining us from his studio in in California, and we'll also be joined by a representative of the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart, Germany, where a life-size Sally Carrera, the lead female character in the movie Cars, will be featured, and we'll have a conversation about how Jay works with his team to actually create characters from cars and cars from characters. And that should be very exciting. So let's just leap right in here to this exhibition and the conversation that we want to have today. And as I said to my guests, this is very much a conversation. I think that their responses will lead where we go as much as my questions might. So I'd like to start with something that's specific to this exhibition, but also to a general way that we connect with cars, because ultimately it's all passion. And this exhibition talks about manufacturers who have been as successful building race cars as they have been building luxury or touring cars. And we have pairs of cars here, 8 pairs of cars here in the exhibition: Delahaye, Duesenberg, Jaguar, Oscar, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, and Isotta Fraschini. And so I'd like to start with Anne. What characteristics might or must a brand possess in order to create a really compelling competition car? And I know that you've got a really compelling competition car right behind you.
Well, you mean in my opinion? Well, personally, yes. When I'm buying cars, and since Bob passed, I really look for one-offs, special bodies, or show cars. That's what really appeals to me. And did you want me to tell you about this car right here?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Why is that a compelling car? This
is a 1948 Ferrari 166 Barchetta prototype. Coach work by Touring, and it's serial number 0002M. It was the first Ferrari imported into the United States, and we have documentation of that. We also found a magazine that wrote an article back in what? When was this imported in? Do we remember? 48, it was in. We have a magazine from that era that talks all about it. And of course, this is the street version of the racing car 0008M, which is not here. It's in England, getting ready to be shown at a Salon Privé. And Enzo Ferrari, of course, was not so interested in street cars. So he was convinced by Luigi Canetti to build street cars to support his racing habit, which is unlike Ford, because they were building race cars to support their production cars. But anyway, so this is the first Ferrari imported into the United States and designed by Andreloni for Enzo Ferrari, and the company for which Louis is the head designer. Now, Louis, did you want to chime in and say anything?
Yes, I would love to. First of all, I would like to say that, Anne, you are maybe the most luckiest person having that car. We all love this car. It's just amazing. Secondly, it's considered as everyone knows, it's considered as the most important Ferrari, especially your car. It's one of the most important Ferrari. On a design point of view.
Sorry. Yes.
No, please.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, and so what is it besides its early construction? What else has made this car an icon? What draws people to it, and what has made it important over the decades?
Well, there is obviously all the aspect of winning races with certain moments, etc. But I can tell you on a design point of view, and I will start with his name. That car is called a barchetta, which means a small boat. How come it's called a barchetta? Well, there is this detail. If you see the lower part of the car, the rocker panel, at that period, the rocker panel were still quite straight. Why? Because we had like two beams between the front axle and the rear axle, and then the skin of the door and the skin of the floor. So it was quite normal to have like an angle at the bottom. This is one of the very first cars who get the rocker panel completely round, which makes the car much softer, which gives much more importance to the wheels. And we know that the wheels are a bit of the muscle of the car. And just by that, thanks to this section, it makes the car much more sexy. And then on top, there is a very small details that you don't really need, but makes the design recognizable and very special. And this small lip starting from the front wheel arch, then going through the door, and then pop, jumping on top of the rear wheel arch. And it's just a small detail which finalize the car, and I would say which transform a beautiful design into a magic wow effect. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And asking a question, Steve, coming to you, thinking about what characteristics make this car, especially the Barchetta, is a very interesting car, because obviously it is a competition car, built as a competition car, but as Louis just so eloquently expressed, it's also quite beautiful and very elegant. And that was something that when Ferrari started to build their first road cars, and most of them embodied by Carrozzeria Touring, it confused, I think, a lot of their clientele, because the cars had the look of very elegant touring cars, but they were actually pretty rough and ready race cars underneath that skin.
So Louis don't like this at all. I would take the skin off so you can see what's underneath, because it's what's underneath that really counts. Because that's the that's the speed, that's the performance, that's the handling, that's everything. You know, those little speed lines and everything are beautiful, but I love to see what's underneath.
And it's a very
Steve, you are
interesting point.
completely wrong, because what is important is the skin, and only the skin. What is underneath is not important at all. And I will give you an example. There is a car which I love.
We could put a rubber band in there then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was your example, Louis?
Well, no, it's a stupid example, but it's a car which I really love. It's the car from the Saint, which is the Volvo P 1800. Beautiful design. You look at the car, you imagine a very powerful engine, and then you drive it and you say, oh my God, what a disappointment.
Horrible.
But at least the design make the wow effect and make your heart beating.
Well, and that's it. And for you, what is it that makes that car speak to you? I mean, is it the design? Is it the race history? Is it the combination of the two? What?
It's actually both. Well, you know that Bob met Enzo Ferrari and Luigi Canetti. Well, met Enzo in 1955 and was lifelong friends with him. And then later in 1957, met Luigi Canetti when he bought his first Ferrari. And there's a long story about that. But
a great story.
Which I will tell you one, maybe not today, but it's important for this collection, and it's important for me because of the connection with Enzo Ferrari and Luigi Canetti. And Luigi Canetti having driven 0008 22, which I call it, to an all-out victory in the 1949 Le Mans. And so when the car, Bob had been trying to buy that car for years. And when it finally came up in 1994, 95, it was really important for the car to come here. And I think this is where the car should be for now because of the connection with Bob and Enzo and Luigi. And I have to tell you a funny story. I think we bought 22 in 94 and 95, and then we bought this later in the 90s. When Bob came home with this, it was in boxes. And I'm like, what the hell did you buy? Of course, he knew what he bought. I said, what have you bought? There were just boxes and boxes and boxes. And it was restored in-house by our wonderful restoration team. And I have to tell you, anytime you buy a car like that and it's already in pieces, it's a little nerve-wracking. But the guys spread everything out, and you know, there was nothing missing except one screw. One screw. So anyway, and this is, this was shown, what, 99 at Pebble Beach and won its class with 100 points. And Bob said, Ferrari judges at Pebble Beach would rather eat their children than give 100 points. So we were really happy with this restoration. So anyway.
Are you still looking for that screw?
Yes, we are. Did you?
Maybe we can pass an announcement on internet saying we are still looking for that screw.
Yes.
Please have a look.
Yeah.
If someone can find that little screw.
We think it's somewhere on Rodeo Drive. Yeah.
This is a great example of the list of questions that I have being completely superseded by the direction of the conversation, because two things come up. One, Steve, I know that for you, it happens all the time when a client comes with cars in boxes that they are absolutely complete, nothing missing except for one screw. Not. The second thing is, how different is the approach, or is it different, to restoring a competition car versus restoring a touring or luxury car from the same coach builder or manufacturer?
You're asking me? I don't think there really is a difference. They're both, especially luxury cars, you know, that are custom built. You know, they're both built the same way. They're built one-offs, and if we got a car like that in boxes, we would put it together first before we did anything. You need to know what you have, what you don't have. You need to know how it's going to fit together. You can't paint parts and start to put it together and oh, geez, we don't have the hood. You know, it's you know, when you get stuff like, you got to put it together first. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And the other part of this question where it goes is, and by the way, I do know the wonderful story, and we're going to tantalize our entire audience about this, and I apologize. I do know the wonderful story about the 56 Ferrari, which is one of my favorite cars in the collection, and as you know, and one of my favorite cars on the planet, and it's such a great story and so very Bob Lee. But now, going back to Ferrari and specifically his need to build road cars to support the racing, which also was the case, which saw the Maserati brothers fail so miserably as businessmen. Right behind me is this wonderful 1930 Fred frame Duesenberg sprint car, and the Duesenberg brothers, brilliant engineers, wonderful builders of race cars, also were not very good businessmen because they didn't get how they had to sell cars to customers in order to support racing. This is sort of a common theme through the ages. What do you think, and I'll throw this to Louis, as somebody who has built wonderful grand touring cars and sporty cars for marques that have great sporting reputations, what is it about the reputation of a manufacturer and their products that lends itself to successful luxury or touring cars, and what might not?
Well, there is many examples who shows that it is strongly linked. And the fact that the reputation can stays over the years. If I take the example of these two famous Italian brands, which are Alfa Romeo or Lancia, in my head, especially maybe for someone from my generation, Lancia, it's immediately linked to the rally and to the WRC victories with Lancia. So Lancia didn't race since, I don't know, 30 years maybe, but I still have that in my mind. Alfa Romeo obviously is well known for racing. They are now, they are back with on Formula One, but since 1 or 2 years. But even before, it was still that brand was strongly linked to race. It helps, obviously. You gave the example of Ford previously, that Ford was doing races and race car to help selling street cars. We have at Touring Superleggera, our DNA, our heritage, our legacy is based on race body, with the 8C 2900, with the BMW Mille Miglia, with the obviously the Ferrari 166. Thanks to that, we create a reputation of an efficient coach builder, which is the opposite of other coach builder, which were considered as just extremely good artists making, how can I say, very opulent design, but without any reason behind. In our case, we had this reason to make light body and extreme aerodynamic body. Thanks to that, we create this reputation, and then we create these beautiful long luxury car, GT cars. I believe that racing cars and luxury cars goes together. They are.
Would you ever think of designing a pure race car?
Well, the thing is that today, our knowledge on aerodynamic, it's so different compared to the very few knowledge they had in the 30s. So if I had to design an efficient car today, I would have to pass hours and hours and hours with aerodynamics guys, engineers, etc., which would ruin completely my design. In the 30s, we were doing aerodynamic with very simple things, you know, with fabric along the car, and to see how moves that fabric with the wind. So everything was very, very experimental. Now it's not anymore experimental. It's quite serious, and also because the objective, the target, is another thing. We have in the market cars which goes over 400 kilometers an hour. So it's another world. So to the question, do I want to make a race car? No, maybe not.
Yes, I can understand that completely. Steve, another question for you about the pairs of cars that we have in the exhibition today show a certain relationship that basically the engineers, the underpinnings. I mean, this is one of the things that a number of years ago, the Pebble Beach Concours, for the first and only time, I believe, had a class for bare chassis. You mentioned the fact that you'd want to see under the skin of the Ferrari 166. To you, what does it mean when you're doing a restoration, and you're looking at how a car is built in terms of its chassis and its chassis engineering, how that relates to what it is that we see in the finished product?
Well, as an aside, we had a Duesenberg chassis at that Pebble Beach show. It was quite a while ago. It was pretty cool. I thought that was great because they had a lot of great chassis without the bodies on them, you know, and it was pretty cool. So I'm not, you know, I don't know. Some cars had advanced engineering. You know, look at a Duesenberg. A Duesenberg is mechanically very advanced and you know, compared to what they were building Model Ts when they were building Duesenbergs. You know, how did that chassis and the engine affect the styling? would have to say, in the length of the hood, the first thing. That's the first thing I look for, is a nice long hood versus a little Model T hood, you know. But those bodies that were built, you know, that they went on Duesenberg chassis, all of them were custom built by different coach builders. Were bodies built by coach builders that built bodies for numerous chassis. So I don't really think that what's underneath really dictated at that point in time in the late 20s into the 30s. You know what I'm trying to say? That I don't think that the chassis really dictated what the body looked like, because the bodies were designed and custom built for people that went in a showroom, you know, to look and have something built to their needs. If it was a town car or a Murphy disappearing top roadster or something, those bodies could be put on other chassis too. Is that what you're?
It does. Take it to the next step, which is, but was there a certain characteristic that would express itself visually because of the mechanicals?
Well,
for instance, here in the exhibition, we have a 1930 car, you know well, a 1930 Duesenberg Model J Murphy town car.
right.
And a town car is the most formal body style you can possibly have. But Murphy is also noted for certain details of design that, and this particular car with a fairly low roof, it looks incredibly elegant and sporting. It
Right.
doesn't sort of have the air of a town car, because, you know, to me that says, because it's a Duesenberg with this wonderful, sophisticated overhead cam engine and the power and speed that it's capable of, it's something different than something that someone would do on a Packard or a Peerless or something.
Well, that's true. Yeah, Peerless is out of business by then. But
Right.
that's true. The Duesenbergs, no matter, even if it was a formal body, were sportier than a Lincoln. Lincolns were very, very, very formal and stodgy and more upright and square. You know, the Duesenbergs were, you know, sportier. The one thing that all those cars share is size. The custom built cars were big. They had long wheelbases. You know, they had 12-foot long wheelbases, and the production cars that weren't built that way, you know, whether it's a Ford or a Chevy or an Oldsmobile or whatever, were smaller cars. But when you saw a big car coming down the street with, you know, with a big radiator, you knew it was something, no matter what. But yeah, the Duesenbergs were sportier, and across the board, almost, they only built 490 cars, but across the board, they were sportier than you know, Lincolns. Cadillacs were kind of also square, and until they got to the mid 30s, you know, and again, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but you know, that's you know,
you are.
the Duesenbergs you have there are and the one thing that's similar is the engine on a production Duesenberg is similar in design and style to that engine that's in that Duesenberg race car. Originally, I know that engine's been changed 4 or 5 times because that car was used for years. I think now it's got a Sidewinder supercharged engine in it, you know, and
Right.
we did one of them a few years ago for a big collector. There's a lot of race cars out in Seattle, and they're really cool and very complex design too. But you know, but they're not different from the road car, the production car, that much.
Exactly. And speaking of Racetrack to the Opera, and you mentioned your Bentley, and the fact that you've got, as I mentioned before in the introduction, a number of spectacular coach-built Bentleys from the 1950s and 60s in the collection, some of those beautiful Bentleys ever. And it's very interesting that obviously Bentley had long stopped racing after its takeover by Rolls-Royce. However, there's still a certain spirit about a Bentley versus a Rolls-Royce. And just share with us a bit about the experience of driving and riding in the pre-war Bentleys versus those wonderful 1950s touring Bentleys.
Well, the blower Bentley, of course, is a race car, and so the pedals are switched around a little bit. It makes me a little bit nervous, and you know, it has a beautiful boat tail, and it was considered. I forgot the guy's name, but it was considered at the time. Well, it was actually designed from the original personal drawings of Wolf Bernardo. And I wish the car were here to show you. but it's in England. And so it was designed as a race car by Wolf Bernardo from his personal drawings. And you were talking about the design of the car. Oh, here we got a picture of it. It was designed, you know, for speed. It was supposed to be one of the fastest and most beautiful cars at the time. Here's a picture of it, if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
See it? Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted to jump over and say something about the Duesenbergs. You know, we've got the 1933 Wayman-bodied supercharged Duesenberg that was owned by George Whittle. Well, he was more interested in speed and design and worked very closely with the engineer who was what, Gordon Baring? Is it Baring?
He was
Gordon Buick, yes.
designer, the body designer.
Gordon Buick, yeah.
And so, I mean, I can go over and show you, but the design of it is absolutely, shall we walk over there? Let's do it. Let's do it. We're going to go over there. But the design of the
Field
car
trip.
is absolutely, you want to switch me? Here we go. We're going to go over there real quick.
Swap audio.
Okay, here we go. You ready? Okay, I'm fast. All right, quick.
Can you hear her?
Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Yes, we can.
Okay, let's get over here.
By the way, Anne is really fast because it's a very, very, very large room she's walking through. So she's covering a great deal of ground.
It's not the only room either.
No, it's not.
Okay, are we on now?
Yes, you're on. You've been on.
All right, so Donald, as you know, it's a 1933 Duesenberg Model SJ Speedster, Wayman body. We call it the Whittle Speedster because of George Whittle. It was owned by him. Oh, and by the way, it's 100% original. Every single thing. The chrome, the paint, the upholstery, the tires, everything. And anyway, but Troy, come back here. Let's show the boat with this amazing.
And don't get too far away because the audio goes away. Okay.
Really long chassis. Like we think it's like super duper long. But anyway, George Whittle, who was an eccentric millionaire from Lake Tahoe, worked with the engineer. And of course, it's supercharged, but the design of it, you know, is one that, you know, says speed. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Should we go over and see? Oh.
Well, what's interesting, Anne, is that while you're there, what's interesting too is the fact, again, talking about the characteristics of a brand and how they express themselves. This is a car that manages to express the great engineering and speed of a Duesenberg in a way that is supremely elegant. You know, it still looks like an elegant car, even though it's obviously built for speed.
And you know, George Whittle, he liked to drive fast, as did Bob Lee. And so he was made an honorary fire marshal in Woodside, and they gave him a siren. So wait a minute, let me show you this. This is my favorite part of the car. Wait a minute. Let me get in. Okay, so let's see. Is this where I do it? Wait, where is it? Right here?
Yeah.
We like to do that when we go over the ramp.
Now, of course, the reality is, Anne, that in 1933 or 1934, you didn't actually need a siren to have people get out of the way of a Duesenberg coming down the road. I think just simply the sight of it coming down the road would part all the traffic you needed.
That's true. That's true. And then here, I think we should go over and look at one more of Louis' cars. And then we'll come back.
You're walking past one of my favorite cars. Just wave at the Lancia for me as you walk past.
Oh, here's the Lancia. This
Thank
was
you.
one
Yes,
of my
exactly.
first purchases. This is the Geneva and Turin show car. Body
Yeah,
by
it's one of my favorite cars on the
Sorry,
planet.
Lily. Yeah, one of, it's a 200, a PF 200C by the prototype. Yeah, love that. And this is a new one too. This is a 1948 Maserati A6 1500, and it was raced, body by Pininfarina. But let's go look at Louis.
Wait, stand there for a moment. Stand there for a moment, and just go back to the Maserati for a moment, because again,
Yeah.
this is one of the examples that I was talking about earlier. The A6 1500 was the first road car built by Maserati. Maserati had only built racing cars up until that point. So it was the first time they acknowledged the fact that they needed to sell cars to people to drive on the road in order to actually support the racing. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful cars, and very sophisticated, especially when compared to the road-going Ferraris at the time.
And this was raced by Bordoni in Monza. 2 years, I think. All right, now, ready? You ready to go this way?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Now, last year when we were at Salon Privé after the cocktail party, Louis and I and a group of people went to the bar for more drinks, and I pulled out a picture of, you want to back up, of the 1938 A6 2900B Alfa Romeo body by Touring. And when I showed it to Louis, Louis goes, I want. Anyway, this is it. This won Best of Show at Quail in 2009.
And that, I think, is also a great example at that period of time, of course, despite the great competition that the Auto Union and Mercedes had in competition, Alfa Romeo was still quite a force in competition. And these cars are among the most fascinating cars. These and the Delahaye 145s and 165s of the period, where they're actually race cars that had incredibly beautiful and elegant bodies on them, so that you could indeed drive this on the race course or to the opera. I mean, literally from the racetrack to the opera.
And while we're over here, let's look at Steve Babinski's Packard, straight 8 Packard, body by Graber. Now, I saw this, I think, back in 2019 at Amelia Island, unrestored. And then the next thing I know, it's been restored and was up for auction at the Andrews collection. And I said to Bob, I think we better go to Texas and take a look at this car. And so we went there, and of course, Judge Cassini was there. He was looking at the same car. And so Joe and I, he got a list of cars he was interested in. I got a list of cars that I was interested in, and because we didn't want to bid against each other. But anyway, Steve, I'm so happy to have this car. I love
now,
Graber
and you have to be careful, because that could be considered collusion in some circles. So
I know.
You may or may not have had an agreement not to bid against each other, but we can't actually state that for a fact.
Well, and here, let me tell you. So Rob Myers was right there, and he was fussing at us, and he said, "Ann, this is collusion." I said, "Yeah, and get the hell out of here." So then, so if I would bid on a car and then drop out, Joe would say, "Are you out?" I'd say, "Yeah." Then he'd bid on it. It works well. I'm not going to bid against my friend. But anyway,
That car won its class at Pebble Beach. It beat a lot of great cars.
At Pebble.
Yeah. Look, all right, look at this. Now this one, it's class at Pebble. After Steve's restoration, come look at the back of this car. It's amazing. Is that something?
It's an extraordinary car, and while certainly Packard didn't do any racing, because I think James Packard never liked the idea of racing. So Packard is one of the few marques that really didn't do a lot of racing, even back in the early days. But it's quite fascinating to see a car like this with this wonderful Swiss body on it, because it's very sort of unlike what people expect a Packard to look like, which again is an idea of a marque being able to transcend a certain definition, which is I think what this exhibition is all about. The fact that marques can span a very wide range to cover different things.
Okay. All right. So here we'll go. We're just gonna.
Thanks, Ann. I'll send you a check.
I'll send you a check.
All right. So this is just some of the Ferraris, and I'll stop at your favorite car. And
Thank you very much.
Oh, there's the hat.
Yes. Anne has a spectacular fashion sense, which you can imagine from the great taste that she has in cars. And the hat refers to an amazing straw hat that she was wearing at the Pebble Beach Concours when she was in her award-winning Bentley Continental, the prototype, nicknamed Olga. And it's a very sleek, aerodynamic car, coupe. And when I saw her with the hat on outside the car, and then I saw her driving across the ramp inside the car, I had no idea how she actually fit this huge hat into that very, very sleek, aerodynamic car. But somehow she managed to do it because, you know, she's Ann Lee. So, yes, this is one of the most interesting and sort of emblematic racetrack to opera cars you can possibly imagine. This wonderful Ferrari 400. And tell us a little bit about this car. And this is going to lead me to another question that I have here for all of you, but Anne, you can lead us off because it's about the history of the car and how important that is to your connection with it. And the person who commissioned this car was quite a character.
Well, this is a 1956 Ferrari 410 Super America. It's a Series 3, one off coachwork by Ghia. And, you know, you have to wonder, you know, where they got, you know, what the influence of these fins were. My guess is Detroit. And this is not only true for Ghia, but we got to come over here. I'm going fast. Also for the 3 Boanas from 1956, the 2 410 Super Americas and the 250 GT Bob's first. And these are, the coach builder was Boano. But same influence.
And of course, Anne, this is where I get to do my shameless plug, because all of the cars that Anne is showing you are featured in my book, Stile Transatlantico, Transatlantic Style, A Romance of Fins and Chrome, which talks about the creative exchange between Italy and America in automotive design after World War II. But what they also show quite clearly is that Ferrari, which at this time is really beginning to exert itself as a force in racing, in sports racing, is also building these incredible custom bodied cars for very wealthy customers, mostly American customers, in a very dramatic style designed for the road to drive to the opera. There's a wonderful photograph. Anne, tell us about the wonderful photograph that exists of this car when Bob bought it new.
You mean, which new one? You mean when he was with his girlfriend?
Yes, in front of the club in New York.
Oh yeah, it's way down there. Well, you know, Bob was the most notorious playboy in the Western Hemisphere. And so after he bought this, he was zipping all over New York, you know, with girls hanging out anyway. But so the picture's way down there. Do you have that in your book? Yes, it's in the book, of course. Absolutely. Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, anyway, this was Bob. I can make the story really short. Bob was at Bennett Field, I think it was, and met Maston Gregory. And so when Bob was on his way to his first safari, he went through Rome and he called up Maston Gregory, and Maston Gregory set him up with an Italian girlfriend, his next girlfriend, Ivana. And they went around Italy, and they ended up in Modena. And he asked, you know, where the Ferrari factory was, and they said, well, it's in Maranello, but the garage is down the street. So Bob went there and he was talking to the manager and he said, this is just the garage and all these cars belong to customers, so you can look at them, but don't touch anything. So Bob and his girlfriend were walking around looking. The next thing you know, Enzo Ferrari appears and he wants to meet Bob. And so through Bob's Italian girlfriend, they have this wonderful exchange. And he opens the door of a car, which we think is a Europa. Bob, I think, told me it was a Europa. And he asked Bob to get in. And through Ivana, he asked, how does it fit? How does it feel? And Bob says, well, to tell you the truth, my head hits the roof. And Ferrari laughed and said, Ferrari is a shoemaker. If he builds you a car, it will fit. So by the end of the afternoon, Enzo says to Bob, and Bob, listen, Bob was just a young kid. He wasn't anybody famous. He didn't have any money. And he says to Bob, now listen, if you ever buy a Ferrari, you buy it from Ferrari, not from Luigi Canetti in New York. So they exchanged letters and thank yous and so on. And then in 1956, Bob went to he's from New York. He went to the New York Auto Show and he made a beeline to the Ferrari stand. And he saw this beautiful Buono. And he went up to the gentleman and he asked how much the car was. And the gentleman said, the car's not for sale. It has to go back to Italy. So Bob Lee, being Bob Lee, went home and sent a telex to Ferrari, reminding him of their meeting and that he told Bob, if you ever buy a Ferrari, that he should buy it from him. And then 2 days later, Bob gets a phone call from a very agitated gentleman and the man says, I don't know who you are. I don't know how you know Ferrari, but I have been in, I forgot this part. Let me back up. So when he sends a telex to Ferrari, he says, Bob says, I don't know how much the car is worth, but I have $9,500 in my savings account, and I offer that for the car. So then he gets a call from the gentleman at the stand, and the gentleman on the phone says, I don't know who you are, I don't know how you know Ferrari, but I've been instructed to sell you this car, this Buono Geneva show car, for $9,500. I know that it costs the factory 3 times that. Even I, Luigi Canetti, cannot buy the car. Bring me a cashier's check. And he slams the phone down. So Bob goes with the cashier's check and his mother to get the car. And Luigi Canetti demonstrates the car for them by driving down Park Avenue. Luigi's driving, Bob's mother's in the back and in the front seat, and Bob is in the back on the luggage compartment, right on where the luggage goes. And anyways, Luigi's driving like a madman down Park Avenue. And Luigi was very upset, but he and Bob became very, very good friends. So this is the beginning of it all. And one thing I love about that story is here, Ferrari was famous, and he just took a little, he embraced a young kid who admired his cars, not even realizing that meeting was the initial cultivation of one of the most ardent Ferrari collectors. So maybe
well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how we encourage and inculcate the passion for cars in people. It's by giving them access, no matter at what level. I'm going to have to get to the wrapping up of the program now, so I'm going to ask my question, which I gave you before. You've been previously advised to think about this question, and while Anne is walking back, I'll start with you, Steve. We've got 8 pairs of cars in this exhibition, and which of the pairs speak to you the most and why? The pairs of the cars are a pair of Isotta Fraschini's, a 1909 Tipo FENC and a 1927 Tipo 8AS Fleetwood Roadster, a 1953 Oscar MT4 Vignale Coupe, which won its class at the 1953 Le Mans, and a 1961 Oscar 1600 GT Coupe by Carrozzeria Touring, a 1953 Jaguar Mark 7 sedan, and a 1955 Jaguar D-Type, a 1997 Ferrari F310B Formula One car, and a 1984 Ferrari 400i, and a 1930 Duesenberg Fred Frame Special, or the 1930 Duesenberg Model J Murphy Town Car, a 1936 Delahaye 135 CS Grand Prix car, which won the 1938 24 Hour of Le Mans, and a 1951 Delahaye 135M Cabriolet, a 1957 Chevrolet Black Widow NASCAR Racer, and a 57 Chevrolet Bel Air convertible, or finally a 1964 Alfa Romeo TZ1 and a 1964 Alfa Romeo 2600 Spider with bodywork by Carrozzeria Touring. So what are your choices, and what is your choice and why, Steve?
Well, you know, can I mix them up?
Split the pairs,
Because
eh?
you know, the Fleetwood Isotta is really a special car. But the 1909 Isotta is a little, it's a Voiturette, I believe, isn't it? One of the small ones.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, 1.2 liter.
Yeah, a D-type Jag has been one of my all-time favorites. I've always wanted a D Jag. The Mark 7 is, you know, I don't know. I like Duesenbergs, but I don't like town cars because I never wanted to feel like I was a chauffeur. I want to drive a sporty car, not a town car. You know, I guess, and the TZ1 is really pretty cool too. I guess I'd take the Duesenbergs probably because I'm just kind of I'm an American kind of, you know, American car kind of person, and I think that's a pretty cool pair of cars. I like the race car actually better than the town car.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It's interesting though. I like your idea of the split pair with the Isotta and the D-Type. That could be quite interesting.
That would probably be it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, having said that, Louis and Anne, you do not get to split your choices. So I'll next go to Louis. What is your choice?
Well, if I cannot split the pair and if I cannot choose a touring car,
I'm just kidding about touring. You can choose.
No. I was joking. But anyway, my choice is not the touring, but there is a pair which I really love. Is both Jaguar. Obviously, in terms of design, they are both extremely beautiful. I totally agree with Steve. The D-Type is such beautiful, such a sexy design, if I can say, for a race car, and they are extremely, these two cars under the same brand, they are extremely complementary. One is a sport racing car, extremely light, quite small, very small body at the end, very light body. You know, I was speaking about the rocker panel. In this case, if you take the D-Type, you cut it and you look at the section is oval. It's quite amazing. You don't do the experience, don't cut the car, just believe me. But and the other one is considered as one of the most beautiful sedan, but it's important. It shows you all the luxury. It's the best definition of luxury. So getting these two cars in my garage, I know that I can drive 360 days a year because it goes for every occasion.
Excellent. Excellent choice. By the way, not simply because the Mark 7 happens to be my own car. So I applaud your choice beautifully. And I love the Mark 7 also because it's the very epitome of the Jaguar slogan, grace, pace, space. You know, it has it all. So, and Anne, can't wait to hear your choice.
Oh, well, I'm leaning toward the 53 and the 61 Oscars, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, I don't have any, and I want one.
Okay.
But I mentioned earlier that I'm really interested in special bodies and particular coach builders. And I love Vignale. We do have some Vignale cars. And of course, I love touring. And so one is a Vignale, and it's a Le Mans winner. And I have an affinity for those. And the other Oscar is a touring body. So those are the ones I would choose.
Wonderful choices all. And once again, as we sign off, I want to thank the three of you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's such fun. I enjoy spending time with each of the three of you, and to spend time with the three of you all together is even better. It would be fantastic once we can all join in the same place again. I think that would be an absolute delight. And I also want to remind everyone who is watching this that this program will also be posted on our YouTube channel, the Audrain Automobile Museum YouTube channel, and on our website. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We post 2 new videos each week, highlighting cars from the collection and highlights from our exhibitions. And you can also go onto our websites to get more information about our exhibitions, our current ones, our future ones, and our past exhibitions, as well as buy a selection of our merchandise, which is available online as well. I want to thank you so much, Steve, Louis, and Anne, for joining us today. And thank you all who have watched this today. And we hope to welcome you soon here at the Audrain Automobile Museum in Newport, Rhode Island. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.